Welcome back to the update. I'm Tiffany.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Jai. Wow, can you believe it's already November? Yeesh! Months, as we call them, they fly by like crazy. Now, it's Wellness Wednesday, and it's time for the update. But first, can we take a quick minute to check in with how well we feel? Let's just take a quick minute for ourselves. A widely practiced breathing style. Now, you might have heard of it as the 4x7 by 8x4, or maybe the box breath, which is 4x4x4x4. That's the great one to do if you haven't practiced a whole lot first. And essentially, you're just in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Now, I personally really like inflating all the way from the gut through the nose, and then once I'm exhaling, through the mouth. So you've of course probably figured out by now, when we're enjoying ourselves in this life, we feel like our contributions are making the world a better place, don't you think? And that's when we, in turn, get to feel even better. But what does that look like? Feeling proud of our contributions to the world is going to look a little different for each person. We all live different lives, engage in different work, different hobbies, family, different experiences. Same experiences with different perceptions based on what we've gone through, the thought patterns and ways of processing emotions, right? We're all different. So, is there anything we all do? Something in common maybe? Perhaps something we do so much that maybe even we take it for granted sometimes. Something that could even be the main action that keeps us living. I'll give you a hint. We all breathe. I call it life force. You may have heard it referred to that way because breath quite literally powers the mind and body, right? Another reason I like to call it life force is that I couldn't help noticing that when I witness excitement, it usually increases the rate of breath. And when I witness peace, it usually means a slower rate in breath, which usually means a slower heart rate too, and in turn, that calms down the organs. I can feel everything being calmer, vibrating that much closer to homeostasis. Now, in that cool, calm, collected state, we gain access to absorbing more of the energy we desire, manifesting it at an exponentially increased rate, feeling more content without even desiring a lot of those frivolous purchases. And here's a big one: feeling like our love, vibration, and presence itself is a major contribution. This has all come from just my own experience staying plugged in to consciously breathing. So let's do a little bit of this breath, and I hope you feel incredibly decluttered from it. So again, we're just going to come in through the nose, inflating the gut, let those lungs in the chest open up, and then just sit there and enjoy it for a 4 count. Then exhale. Let's go for 8 on the exhale through the mouth, and then hold for another 4. And we'll just go for 2 cycles so we can all get a little relaxation and kick off the news. So feel free to close your eyes. Take a moment to just lighten your weight from head to toe. Just release a little. And we'll go in and hold. And exhale. And hold. And in. And hold. And out. Nice. Now, if you enjoyed this practice, might I recommend starting your very own non-negotiables. Why are they non-negotiables? Because they're non-negotiable. But let's go ahead and kick off the show, guys. Come on back after this commercial, and we will go right into the haps with the maps.
thanks again for being with us here today. We hope you all had a very spooktacular Halloween. It is November 2nd. Cannot believe it. I have no idea where 2022 has gone, but man, the holiday season is upon us and it's time to party. But first, let's take a trip, an unbiased trip around the world. It's the Haps with the Maps. For the fifth time since 2019, national elections are being held. For at least 3 years now, Israel's political climate has been unpredictable, and the last elected premier, Benjamin Netanyahu, is currently facing corruption charges, which led many to think he might be unfit to lead the country. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is recharging his efforts via a powerful alliance with far-right lawmaker Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is also no stranger to controversy. Now, he was convicted for some comments against the Arab nations and their people. In fact, he promised to deport Arab lawmakers. He even promised that, quote, a vote for my party would bring about a fully right-wing government, with Netanyahu as prime minister. Now, Ben has seen his approval rating increase since his outspoken commentary and joining up with Netanyahu. He's even gone as far as to promise if Netanyahu is elected, he will support legislation that would change laws and the way they are passed, lessen the judiciary's power, and assist Netanyahu to avoid a conviction. Now, Netanyahu has publicly denied any wrongdoing and refuses to step down. The ongoing trial has found discrepancies in his reports. Now, his main opposition is Yair Lapid, who was a former author and broadcaster who became caretaker prime minister as part of a power-sharing agreement last year after leading a diverse coalition that brought charges against Netanyahu. While serving, a few of his main contributions were meeting with Joe Biden in Israel, leading a brief military op against Gaza, and signing a diplomatic maritime boundary agreement with Lebanon. This election, like many others around the globe, seemingly will have quite the impact, and the candidates seemingly have quite polar views, extreme opposites. And so let's all do our homework and feel confident that we're voting for the candidates who believe in what we believe in, and maybe also who we think would best serve the masses. How you vote is entirely up to you. We're just here with the facts. Now, moving over to Russia, the annual fall draft commences. As is customary, Russia's annual fall draft just happened, adding, get this, another 120,000 men to the Russian armed forces. At the same time, Russia has reportedly doubled its evacuation efforts in the southern port town of Kherson in anticipation as they believe Ukraine will attempt to take it. Now, Russian military officials have issued a statement stating that conscripts being called up will not be deployed in Ukraine. According to the U.S.-based Institute for the Study of War, the Russian Defense Ministry is attempting to deceive the Russian population into believing that autumn conscripts will not be sent to fight in Ukraine, likely prevent draft dodging. The draft set to occur in October was delayed when Putin partially mobilized some 300,000 reservists on September 21st. And we'll share the facts when we have them. Now, moving over to the UN nuclear watchdog, we recently reported on how Russia accused Ukraine of developing a dirty bomb containing radioactive material and having plans to set it off on their own soil. The Associated Press reported that following Russia's unfounded claims of the dirty bomb's presence, the UN watchdog agency sent 2 experts to inspect 2 sites Russia claims are involved. Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia stated in a letter to the UN Security Council that Ukraine's nuclear research facility and mining company received direct orders to develop such a dirty bomb. Most reports draw awareness around the Western world's mistrust of Russia, and that's in line with what the UN believes. Now let's go to Jai for our next story.
Thank you, Tiff. Now moving over to Asia, tensions are mounting as Supreme Leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and his regime are very unhappy that South Korea and the United States have been performing a series of large-scale military drills. Now, according to the Associated Press, American and South Korean officials have repeatedly defended the drills, stating they are defensive in nature and that there are no plans of attacking North Korea. But Pak Jong-chon, Kim Jong-un's close confidant and secretary of the ruling Workers' Party, called the drills aggressive and provocative. He also claimed that in the recently released Pentagon National Defense Strategy Report, it details a major policy objective of collapsing the North Korean regime. He also slammed South Korea because they stated that North Korea using its nuclear weapons would put it on a path to self-destruction. And in his most graphic threat, he said, if the US and South Korea attempt to use armed forces against North Korea without any fear, the special means of the armed forces will carry out their strategic mission without delay. Now, the US and South Korea have to face a terrible case and pay the most horrible price in history. These were his words. Now, apparently North Korea is considering detonating its first nuclear test device since November 2017 in the next few weeks. Now, you know we'll be updating you on this story. Has massive world implications with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, the Koreas, lots of countries voting in what could change many of the freedoms and systems people have been used to. Economic uncertainty is definitely going on in many places as well around the world. The world's quite unpredictable right now. That is a fact that we cannot control. We can't control people either, but in times of uncertainty, what can we lean on? What can we control? Our attitude, our mental state, our effort to be our best in every way imaginable, right? So let's practice that breathing whenever we get a little moment that challenges us. Just my own 2 cents. Let's notice how much more we are in tune with the wisdom of what our higher self would do in situations. It's crazy. Now let's go over to Daniel.
Thank you, Jai. Now, we have been covering the elections in Brazil that pitted incumbent Bolsonaro against former 2-term president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. And he has won by some 2 million votes, signifying Brazil's desire for democracy. Many of da Silva's supporters took to the streets to celebrate the feeling that much closer to a heightened democracy in Brazil. Bolsonaro had been very public concerning his allegations of the voting system fraud, and now many of his supporters are not accepting the recent elections results. In fact, many of Bolsonaro's trucker constituents reportedly began protesting following the results. This, along with all the celebrations, blocked the roadways, and this caused Brazil's Supreme Court to order the Federal Highway Police to immediately clear the blocked roads. Just one thing, the old president, Jair Bolsonaro, was very close with the police, allegedly. So this has the Supreme Court justices and other officials uncertain as to what the police will actually do. In an attempt to influence them, failure to comply will mean its director can be fined up to the equivalent of about $19,000 an hour, as well as be removed from duty and face jail time. That's intense, right? Now, since the order, the majority of these street blockages have been cleared, but Bolsonaro has yet to concede, however. Now let's go over to the Middle East. We take a look at some international relations. A couple of elections that have hopefully restored democracy, meaning that people get to vote and have a say in how things are ran where they live. We've also taken a look at a couple countries that are probably on your short list of who not to upset. Looking back in our more recent history, a region of the world has been, like the Middle East, this region of the world has been mostly been known for its lack of peace between the neighboring nations, potentially for misunderstandings, maybe because there's language barrier, creates less translation, or maybe there's other reasons. But Earlier this week, leaders of the Arab nations met in Algeria for the first League summit in 3 years to see if they can bring peace to the Middle East. Bars. Tuesday marked the 31st summit for the largest annual Arab conference that meets to discuss creating a more peaceful way of living and more peaceful foreign relations with each other. This came with impeccable timing due to, lots of stories we've been following, such as rising inflation, energy supplies, food shortages, all the fun stuff. It takes place in Algeria. Why? Because other than Russia, Algeria is seen as the major player with oil and gas production, especially in Europe's eyes, amidst what's going on in Russia. With members, so 22 members, according to the Associated Press, many of which represent Arab nations who depend on Russia and Ukraine for wheat. But the number one topic was relations between Israel and Palestine. Algerian President Tebboune stated in his opening address, and I quote, "The Palestinian question is the mother of all questions." He blasted Israel for its aggression against Palestine and urged the Palestinian political fractions to unite, citing it is the only way out of the impasse. We'll see you after this break with some more uplifting stories. Back in a jiff.
Welcome back to the update on the HYFN TV network. Now remember, you can always catch us on your phone at hyfntv.com or on your Roku device by downloading our channel HYFN TV. Once you're on the website, choose the On Demand in the drop-down and rewatch all your favorite segments for free at your fingertips on demand. Now it's Wellness Wednesday, and I'm catching my breath right now. And after all those international relations stories, we'd like to share something a little more upbeat. Check this out.
Start vaccinating the newborn. Science moves in a very deliberate way, and it's taken a while for us to develop a vaccine. We're using new science, different from what we did 30 years ago, of course, to develop these new vaccines. So it is thought, and there is absolutely good reason to believe, that these are going to be very safe products.
RSV, the respiratory virus that affects newborns typically, with that well-known wheezing, has apparently met its match. Pfizer has been conducting a big international study and found that the way to prevent a newborn's chances of contracting the virus in those first crucial 90 days, by as much as reportedly 82%, is to vaccinate the mom-to-be. At 6 months, it still showed to be around 70% effective at preventing severe illness. Now we're talking about vaccines here. I don't think I have to tell you about all of the distrust of vaccines, the disinformation on both sides of the coin, so on and so forth. We're not going there, but do your research and formulate your own opinion. Okay, you are the only one who should be deciding what goes into your body, and definitely your kid's body if you have them. Arm yourself with the info you need to form your educated opinion. Then once you make your decisions, they're your decisions. Now let's go to Jai for a recent story on the abortion rights, such a hot button topic right now, and with upcoming elections, let's see what Jai has to say.
Thank you, Tiff. And yeah, what a massive hot button topic right now. It's definitely causing a ton of swing votes, and in many cases, voters' opinions on abortion law are prevailing as a decision maker for many, many, many people, especially women, of course. And in that line, a judge in Bismarck, North Dakota, pumped the brakes on enforcing abortion law, anticipating, get this, a substantial probability that a constitutional challenge to the law will succeed. Judge Bruce Romanek, you may remember the recent United States Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, but in a quite emotionally intelligent move, the federal government basically said the states should engage to figure out where they stand on the issue and codify state law accordingly. So that means, based on the recent decision, abortion is not illegal in North Dakota as of right now. Side note, that may not be super relevant at the moment because the state's only abortion clinic has moved to another state while it challenges the abortion law. But regardless, this is a forward move for those who support keeping abortions available. And for that reason alone, the information should be shared. Now, moving forward, in other news that's sure to make a certain someone feel well, or at least more well, major U.S. automobile manufacturer Ford ordered to pay $6 million to a family after it was discovered that a Missouri woman's death was caused by asbestos exposure coming from dust related to a brake repair. Interesting. That's not something we hear every day, huh, folks? Now, her name was Linda Belling. She died of mesothelioma in 2019. She was 70 years old. The family attorney stated that Ford neglected to inform her that asbestos was present due to the dust that surfaces when repairing the brakes. Ford contends that the exposure was limited and that the family failed to show that being the cause. Now, this is not the first case against Ford for the exact same alleged claim. Ford legal representatives made mention of appeals regarding all cases of the sort, but for now, that family got $6 million awarded to them. No, it won't bring back Linda, but maybe her story can serve to teach a huge company to take a little more care. Perhaps people will be more aware that this could happen to them as well, or maybe there's another reason it happened. But we wish the Belling family peace and togetherness. Now, let's kick it over to Daniel for a little bit more of a fluid story.
Thank you, Jai. Now, water is something that we consume all day, every day, or at least you should. It hydrates us, cleanses us, and so much more. But what would you do if without notice you had to go stand in line for some clean water? Clean water to drink, clean water to bathe, water to flush a toilet. Well, that's what the people of Jackson, Mississippi have been dealing with. Now, we're unclear on how long the quality of Mississippi's water had not been satisfactory for consumption, but here's what we do know. Back in July, after flooding tampered a treatment plant, the state's health department found cloudy water that could get people sick. The EPA spent months taking samples there at the facility and just announced it is safe to drink the water. We extend much joy for all the family, businesses, anyone else affected living there. We are thrilled to hear you have clean water again. I mean, can you guys even imagine not having clean water? We don't think about the kind of impact that could have. That's something that'll affect the state of your wellness for sure. Let's not take what we have for granted. Now let's go to Tiff, who has a heartwarming story for us.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, this story comes from Portland, Maine, where the Associated Press reports the federal government has devised a plan to create offshore wind power, which means the North Atlantic right whales who live nearby will be much safer. Only an estimated 340 of these whales will still exist today and benefit from President Biden's strategy to encourage offshore wind along the Atlantic coast, which would be a much more viable way for the United States to gain independence on the energy grid. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management released a draft plan this month to conserve the whales while allowing for the building of wind projects. The agency said the ongoing efforts to save the whales and create more renewable energy can coexist. Quote, "As we face the ongoing challenges of climate change, this strategy provides a strong foundation to help us advance renewable energy while also working to protect and recover North Atlantic right whales and the ecosystem they depend on," said Janet Hoyt, who is the Assistant Administrator for NOAA Fisheries. All the involved agencies are stating they will provide offshore wind developers with the knowledge of how to mitigate risk to the whales and navigate the process of creating such an influential energy source. We'll see you after the break shortly for This Day in History when Wellness Wednesday continues. Welcome back to the update. This is Around the World. Next up is our favorite constitution-y, that's a good word, looking dude educating us on all the fun things that have gone down in the history books. It's time to go to Daniel for This Day in History.
Oh boy, it's time to turn back the pages of time and take a little trip through the years. Starting things off in 1755, the Queen Consort to King Louis XVI of France was born. She had a massive jewelry collection being shown in this video here. A consort is the wife to a king. That's different from the queen, because the queen is just a natural heir to the throne. Now let's jump forward a couple of centuries to the 1800s. In 1889, North Dakota was admitted as the 39th state to the Union. And guess who was 40? South Dakota. Very nice, back to back. In 1936, the entire entertainment industry changed. The British Broadcasting Corporation, otherwise known as the BBC, launched its first television channel, the world's first regular television service. And then came Netflix. Now in 1947, most of us know the story best from watching this film, The Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio. That film actually details another one of Howard Hughes' aircraft closer, but it's the same guy. Howard, an aviator and filmmaker, piloted the Spruce Goose, a wooden flying boat essentially, and their voyage lasted an insane 1 mile. That was it. But that was actually really insane for that time. Now back in 1949, the Netherlands and Indonesia came to an agreement called the Hague Agreement that ended their conflict over Indonesia's independence. Beautiful seeing that. In 1963, South Vietnam's president Ngo Dinh Diem was killed in a coup. You know we love talking about those coups here on the update. 1983, the efforts of one Martin Luther King Jr. were further shown respect when U.S. President Ronald Reagan signed a bill naming the third Monday in January as MLK Day, forever cementing his name in our history, and rightfully so. We appreciate every way your blood, sweat, and tears push the needle. Thank you, Doctor. And in a super relevant event in international relations history, in the year 2000, for the first time, a resident crew arrived at the International Space Station. The crew had 1 American and 2 Russians. Isn't it weird that we don't like to be bested by them at anything? Do you think they feel the same? I think they probably do. Now that's going to wrap up Around the World. We'll see you in a few for the Arizona State News.
Welcome back, everyone. You know what time it is. It's Arizona State News time. Here on HYFN TV, we love to keep you in the know with what's happening right around you here in our own backyard. Now here on the update at HYFN TV, we make it our mission to break down the news in Arizona in the most relevant and meaningful way for you, our viewers. Unbiased, down the middle. That's why we are your 2022 election news leaders. Now, let's kick it off with an update to the Arizona elections. Now, we are quite proud of being your 2022 election news leaders, and that means we make it our responsibility to arm you with just the facts so you can be an informed voter. And with those midterm elections coming up right around the corner, it is crunch time to learn what bill is proposing what and what each candidate believes, so we can all feel confident that when we go to the polls, it's just, okay, let's match these up, I want this, I want that, and boom, it's done. It's your right, no, it's your privilege. And that said, the latest reports show Republican candidate, longtime Arizona news anchor Kari Lake, and Democrat Katie Hobbs projected pretty much neck and neck right now. And moving on to the Arizona State Senate candidate pool, well, that just shrunk down a little bit for now. Announced within the last 24 hours, Libertarian Mark Victor ended his Senate race, and endorsed Republican Blake Masters. With just 1 week to go till the elections, Victor's endorsement could help Masters get the job done. But the candidate he faces, Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, is no walk in the park. We'll see what happens come November 8th. And moving on to a proposition on those ballots, look out for Prop 309. Speaking of November 8th, did you know that up until now, if you didn't have your photo ID with you, you could just as easily present 2 other documents, such as a utility bill, and still vote at the polls? Now, all in-person voters moving forward would be required to present one of the traditional identification types. There would also be additional steps taken with mail-in ballots to ensure that only the intended recipient submits said ballot. Now, we won't take all your time reviewing each proposition on the ballots, but be sure to pop online and research Proposition 309. PBS Horizons had a fantastic educational, informative discussion regarding Prop 309 that you're seeing right now in the split screen, or just did. I highly recommend watching that video to clear up what you should know about it. Now, let's go to Daniel.
Thanks, Jai. Now, we recently covered the story of Murray Hooper, an Arizona death row inmate set to be executed November 16th for the 1982 murders of William Pat Redmond and his mother-in-law, Helen Phelps, during a robbery in Phoenix on New Year's Eve 1980. But Hooper's attorneys say he was convicted and sentenced on unreliable witness testimony, was convicted with allegedly no physical evidence placing him at the scene, and of course there was no fingerprint or DNA evidence back then. So his lawyers have filed an appeal stating that newly discovered material facts have been discovered and their 76-year-old client should receive a new trial. Hooper's attorney said in the latest appeal, and I quote, "Because there is no physical or forensic evidence placing Mr. Hooper at the scene or in Arizona, the unreliability of Ms. Redmond's identification calls his conviction into question and demands relief. We'll let you know as this develops, of course." Now let's send it to Tiff, who's got a fun story about one of the world's most well-known CEOs.
Thank you, Daniel. So, you probably already know we're talking about Elon Musk, who ended up purchasing Twitter and lately has been taking a most active role in determining who should stay and who should go. Now, Musk has said he won't make major decisions about content or restoring banned accounts before setting up a content moderation council with diverse viewpoints. The always humorous Musk changed his profile to Twitter compliant hotline operator, and he's probably not really joking. He loves being on the front lines of his companies. Quote, "Anyone suspended for minor and dubious reasons will be freed from Twitter jail," Musk pledged. He had months earlier said in reference to Peterson that Twitter was, quote, "going way too far in squashing dissenting opinions." One of Musk's first big moves was an open letter to advertisers, Twitter's chief revenue source, promising that he would not let Twitter descend into a free-for-all hellscape as he follows through with his plans to promote free speech on the platform. And he's suggesting asking users to pay $8 for a coveted verified blue check mark as a way to diversify revenue. And that is all the time we have here on The Update. I'm Tiffany.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Jai. Y'all have an amazing Wellness Wednesday.